This is the Jeff McLeod Show, where we talk about God, America, the things that make our country great, and so much more. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Jeff McLeod Show. We're back with some more news regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination, as well as some other interesting details. Also, we're going to be discussing, is cancel culture ever right? Are there limits to free speech? And a lot more. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about all these subjects. So starting off with Kash Patel, today he was questioned on a variety of topics, most notably the Charlie Kirk assassination. So most of the time these hearings in front of Congress are scheduled months in advance, and this was no different. But the fact that Charlie Kirk was assassinated exactly a week ago ended up just making this meeting so much more important, and he was questioned on a variety of different circumstances leading up to the assassination attempt. Representative Scott Fitzgerald asked how the assassin was able to get on top of the roof after the shooting of President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, a little over a year ago. And Kash Patel said that the shooter may have used an exterior stairwell. He toured the campus. He obviously scouted out a week in advance or so about how to get on top of the roofs. And Kash Patel himself walked around the campus and he observed this. So this is an ongoing investigation. So obviously more and more is going to come out about the shooter's motive, which I think was pretty clear, about the layout, how he went about making this assassination attempt successful, unfortunately. So I would just like to insert something as well, that Charlie Kirk had a small security team and he does not have Secret Service protection. So I felt that it was unfair to the local law enforcement in Utah, near Utah Valley University, as well as Charlie Kirk's security team, to expect that they were going to be able to catch the shooter. There were only a few people there on security. Everybody can't be Secret Service protected. Charlie Kirk is not a political figure. He does run Turning Point USA, but he's not a congressman. He's not a senator. He's not a president. I think everybody understands that. So he wasn't offered as much protection as somebody that was in office has, even though he was pretty much one of the biggest political players as far as activism in the United States. I think it's unfair to judge the FBI or local police for the lack of security, considering this was not a major United States leader. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough security to see that there was somebody with a shotgun on a roof with a scope, and ultimately Charlie Kirk lost his life. I think the bigger question is, how are conservatives and how are people that go to college campuses going to have outdoor events? I think it makes it incredibly hard, because you have crazy, deranged people that come out and shoot people. Look at President Trump. He was shot outdoors. Charlie Kirk obviously was assassinated outdoors. Going all the way back to John F. Kennedy deciding to take the roof off of his vehicle, he was assassinated outdoors. Ronald Reagan in close quarters was assassinated outdoors. And you can go on and on. Pretty much every president outside of Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in an outdoor setting. So how do we navigate this? Do we put bulletproof glass in front of people that are speaking at these outdoor events? Do we make sure, is there just better security in general? I think the obvious question there and the obvious answer is yes. But how do we do that without, how do we do that in an outdoor event? Because many times there are buildings far away that no one even thinks of a shooter being able to go in those buildings. The man in Butler, he scaled a building as well. And it's a miracle that President Trump survived and didn't have the same fate as Charlie Kirk. So we're also going to be discussing a little bit more information that came out about Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson. Tyler Robinson's mother said that over the last year that Tyler had become more and more left-leaning. He mentioned shortly before this event to his father that why did Charlie Kirk have to spew so much hate? And the confrontations between he and his father became progressively worse. Obviously, Tyler Robinson was living with a transgender individual. So Tyler Robinson, espoused many of the same beliefs as his transgender partner. And there was clearly some mental issues there. These thoughts grew until the culmination at 12:23 p.m. last Wednesday with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I want to applaud Tyler Robinson's parents in all of this. They're obviously conservative, so they would be against their son's point of view. But it is hard to turn in your son because it's the person that you bore, it's the person that you raised. And I want to applaud them for turning in their son after all this, because they know he's probably going to receive the death penalty, but they cared about justice. And it's something that's to be applauded, something that's to be respected, even though it had to be incredibly difficult. Tyler Robinson's parents convinced him not to commit suicide. As we know, most people in these type of events are either shot down or they commit suicide so they don't have to face their fate in either a prison or being tried and going to court and receiving the death penalty. He had serious thoughts talking about Tyler Robinson about committing suicide, as most premeditated murderers do. There was a stipulation reported when he turned himself into law enforcement. That stipulation was that they would not send a SWAT team. Tyler Robinson was very scared that he was going to be shot by the SWAT team. And I find that extremely, extremely infuriating. This guy who was scared of being shot, most likely he was against guns because he's a left-leaning liberal. He was scared of being shot by a bullet. And this man, literally in front of a crowd of 3,000 people, killed a conservative activist in front of his wife and his children, and in front of other children in that audience, as well as Americans all across social media. He was scared of taking a bullet when he just fired the bullet. What utter hypocrisy. And it's just terrible. So you are willing to kill another individual and make him and his family go through absolute horror, and our country go through absolute horror, and make conservative people very upset. Howbeit, we're not rioting, we're not burning things in the street, but we're very upset. I'm still upset, and it's a week later. You were willing to do that, and you're scared of taking a bullet? You had to know this was coming. If you're seeing this video right now, and you had to know this was coming. You were going to face death. Did you seriously think that you were going to escape? Did you think you were going to go to some other place in the country and get away with this murder, this heinous murder that was seen on, it was recorded, we're in the social media age, and you didn't think you were going to get caught? And you were scared that you were going to be shot when you just shot an innocent man who was only debating something and using his God-given right of free speech in the United States. Shame on yourself. Shame on yourself for thinking that you had a higher standard, that you were above the rule of law, that you were above the same fate Charlie Kirk faced. And let me tell you today, you are going to face the same fate. It could be death by firing squad in the state of Utah. And if you committed this heinous act, and we want to make sure that there's a trial and that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But if all this comes to pass like it looks like it's going to, you deserve to be shot as well for what you did in taking another man's life. Another, going back to our audience, and there was a question that I asked myself and I didn't really have an answer to. And a lot of us saw the video, and it's impossible to remove from our minds. And it brings almost tears to my eyes every time I think about it. And I'm thinking of the ramifications of what happens as a result of that shot. 2 kids being without a father, a mother being without a son, a father being without a son. I think we understand that all. And I don't think I could point that out enough. It's really important to understand Charlie Kirk's humanity and the fact that he wasn't just some political figure or even a Christian. He was a family man, and that's what he cared for most after God. And did he experience pain? It was utterly heartbreaking to see, for those of us who saw it, him bleed out. It was just inhumane what happened, and it was the lowest of man, the utter lowest of mankind and what he's capable of doing. So there was a Christian author that was very close to Charlie Kirk that was with him at this event, and his name is Frank Turek. I had never heard of his name before, but recently, I believe it was today or yesterday, he released a video about his final moments with Charlie, and he traveled with him to this Utah event. He said that Charlie was like his 4th son. He viewed him like that, and when he saw him shot, he did what any loving person would do, and he rushed right to the scene. He said that as soon as Charlie was struck, his security rushed him to the black SUV that we've all seen him taken away in. And it was a random person's SUV, by the way, who gave him the keys, and they took off in it. They proceeded to rush him to the hospital. He said the men were calmly praying and do all they could. He said he panicked. Actually, they took off so fast, he had to dive into the trunk to make sure he could get into the car before it left with the other 4 men of his security team. And he said it was pretty evident that Charlie was struggling. They ended up having to perform CPR. They couldn't get a heartbeat. So I think it's pretty clear now Charlie probably died at the very latest before he got to the hospital. It was impossible to survive being shot through the jugular vein and the carotid artery. And he said as they were performing CPR, he looked into his face and he could tell that Charlie was in the face of Jesus. He had already seen Jesus. Their efforts were futile, howbeit they were still going to try. But the doctor told him later on, when he was at the hospital, he was already in the presence of God. There was nothing they could do. They couldn't save his life. Literally, as soon as he was shot, he died practically. And it's comforting to know as Christians that when we're absent in the body, we're present in the Lord. And Charlie Kirk was right in Jesus' presence. As soon as he was shot, as soon as his life was snuffed out from him, as soon as a man thought evil, I want to say that God thought it for good. Just like for Joseph and his brothers, God is going to use this event for our good. And even though his family, it's hard to reconcile that with his family, taking away a good man, an innocent man, a man who stirred our country to action, a man who saved our country this election cycle. Without him, Donald Trump would not have won the presidency. And if you're listening, I know Donald Trump's not perfect. There are things right now that he's doing that I disagree with, but I believe it's better than the alternative. But Charlie Kirk advocated for that. He advocated for what was right. And most importantly, he advocated for the souls of man. And he wanted people to see Jesus and to have a personal relationship with him. In his wife Erica's words, he wanted to make heaven crowded. And his goal, his pursuits, his aspirations, and that blinking of an eye, that split second, he was in the presence of Jesus. And I'm sure Jesus is going to say to him, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." So did he experience pain? And from everything I've read from doctors, they say within 0.4 seconds, he was unconscious after being struck. The brain, it takes about a second or so to be able to register pain. So he never even registered pain. He was in the presence of Jesus Christ, his Savior. And that's what gives us the ultimate comfort as Christians, regardless of how you die, whether it's through an assassination attempt, whether it's through cancer, whether it's through old age, whether it's through a car accident, that when we die, we're in the presence of our Lord and Savior. And Charlie was too, and he was without pain, and he didn't have to suffer. Praise the Lord. There's a larger trend that I want to address that's happening right now among the right. And I think it's something that Charlie himself would despise and say that we shouldn't be doing. And I believe the right is doing the same thing the left did to us for 20 years. And we are engaging right now in a cancel culture war against people on the left. And I know it's easy to do. We've been being told we're racist, we're fascist, we're Nazis, we're inhumane, we're despicable, we're deplorables, we're Bible-toting Christians, or maybe we're just sick and tired of them making fun of conservatives like Donald Trump and being associated with him. But I'm here to tell you, we can't reward this evil, this evil with evil. We can't do that. If we want our country to be saved, listen, if we want our country to be saved, we need to be engaged in free dialogue. We need to engage with people who disagree with us. We can't decide to cancel people. We can't do it. And I'm as sick as you are with all these perverts and all these disgusting trash heaps of human beings on social media praising the assassin and being so happy that Charlie Kirk is dead. And people running over vigils, people acting like they got shot, mimicking how Charlie Kirk went down. It's utterly despicable. It's disgusting. And I have no other words to say, but I think it's awful. However, we are given free speech in the United States. Wait, I know what people are going to say. Free speech has limits. It does. I'm here and I'm going to say it absolutely has limits. But is being happy in someone's death a limit? We're going to go through constitutionally whether that is true or whether that's false. And I want to flip the script. Do you know what the left is going to be able to do to us if we invoke this sort of hate speech or limit of free speech? Do you know what they're going to do to us next time they get in power? Don't be so naive as to think they're never going to get in power again. I'm going to fight with all you other Charlie Kirk supporters, and we're going to do our very best. But there is going to be a point, as there always has in U.S. history, where the opposition takes control. Do you know what they're going to do to us if right now we reciprocate evil for evil? What they're going to do to us is they're going to put hate speech laws in effect when Democrats take back over. I hope it's a long time from now. It might be when we're middle-aged even. It might be when we're old. But it will happen. Do you know what they're going to do to us? They're going to put hate speech laws in effect. So basically, we're not going to be able to say anything against homosexuality or transgenderism. Don't be so naive as to think it's not going to happen here. It's happened in Europe. It's happened in Canada. There have been hundreds of people in the United Kingdom that have been arrested for hate speech. Okay? Hate speech. I agree. There's a difference between what we're so angry and outraged about. But the left and their virtue signaling, they get just as heated about hate speech. And we cannot make this, and we cannot limit the freedom of speech. Charlie would not have wanted that. There were times where water was dumped on him. There were times where his hat was flung off, and he didn't press charges. And there's people like right now, Candace Owens, and I know that's a friend, and he was very close to her. There are people like Matt Walsh right now and Ben Shapiro that I think they're a little, and I'm angry, by the way, but they are going to fuel people, and I know there's not been any riots or anything, but they're fueling people right now to be really angry. And that's not how we need to respond in Charlie's death. We need to get to the bottom of it and find out who the perpetrator is, if there's any other conspirators in this grand crime. But we also have to decide that we're going to be conservatives and we're not going to be like the liberals. We are not going to get involved in our own cancel culture war. We're not. We can't do it because our actions have consequences in the future. Let's look at in U.S. history of some consequences. The Alien and Sedition Act, and I know sometimes it's used for the right. The Alien Sedition Act signed by John Adams in the early 1800s, around the turn of the 17th century, it ended up being invoked in World War I. Over 100 years later, Woodrow Wilson invoked it and arrested political opponents. So there are bad things that can happen down the line when we look just right in front of us and we don't look ahead. Another example of that, you can go on and on about bad things that happened later down the road. Eminent domain. Theodore Roosevelt had a very, very good idea to preserve land. But what that's become is the government seizure of land 120 plus years later. And it's been bad long term. So are we going to do something right now that's going to be bad in 50 years or maybe even less? I see it being bad in 20 years. Or are we going to make sure that no matter what the left does, we're innocent because we didn't engage in the same political attacks as they did? So let's go through and let's take a look at what the First Amendment says. This is what's important. Congress shall make no law abridging, okay, that means limiting the freedom of speech. So as much as I hate to say it, I'm against saying racial slurs. I'm against saying slurs even. I disagree with them against homosexual people. I'm against it, okay? However, should that be hate speech? I don't believe so. I wouldn't say it. I would never say a racial slur. But it's not, you should not be arrested for what you say. You should be arrested for your actions and what you do. And that's what America was founded on. America was founded on what we do. So if we murder, if we steal, if we lie, in defamation cases, we'll talk about that, we can face arrest. If we rob from the government, those are actions. Speech is not an action, nor most of the time. It's not. So let's look at some of the different areas where free speech was intended. And there are some small areas where there is a limit to free speech, and we'll look at them and see if any of these threats or just celebrations of Charlie Kirk's death fit this definition. So, categories of unprotected speech. The Supreme Court has identified several types of speech that receive less or no First Amendment protection. That's important, and you can go back, you can fact check me on this, but this is 100% verifiable. There's veracity to all these statements, so make sure you listen up. Incitement is number one. So, speech that is directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to produce such action. So, if I go around and I start, I don't know, I'm speaking, and because of my speech, if I say we should go burn down all the businesses in this town, that's incitement. And people proceed to do what I was saying to do. That's an incitement. That is a limit to freedom of speech. Defamation. So that is lying about somebody, and as a result of the lying, a person's business might be harmed, they might lose business, or a person's life could be destroyed and their reputation tattered. So false statements of fact that harm another person's reputation, which are not protected expression. You can't go around lying about people and hurting their reputation. Next, obscenity. Hardcore pornography, but not necessarily vulgar language or indecency. So obviously, child pornography, okay, that is not protected. Speaking around minors about certain things, not protected. That's obscenity. You would be arrested, and you don't have the right to be talking lewdly. Next, child pornography. I already touched on that. A category of speech explicitly excluded from First Amendment protection, and we all understand why. We don't want to harm our children. Just like Tyler Robinson was charged for an aggravated, and it was upgraded to aggravated because it was in front of the presence of children. The same applies with our freedom of speech. True threats. So if I go and I say I'm going to bomb an airport, for instance, that is a threat, and it's an active threat, and you will be arrested. If you make a threat against the President of the United States, against the Vice President, against somebody in Congress, that is something where you could be arrested. If I go and say I'm going to murder so-and-so, that is a threat. Tyler Robinson's, that was a threat, and if he was caught, he would have faced arrest potentially. Fighting words. Face-to-face personal insults that are likely to provoke a violent reaction from the listener. So that's something that is a limit to freedom of speech. Another one that was not listed is basically selling out your government for a foreign government and going and talking to them and selling secrets. That is expressly forbidden. The First Amendment does not protect those types of freedom of speech. Now we're on to the topic, the different people that have been canceled recently. Is that constitutional or not? So you could say it's incitement, I guess. It's directing lawless action, but I wouldn't say so. They're not expressly saying we need to go out and kill more political leaders. If they're talking about killing Donald Trump and planning it, then absolutely they should be arrested. But if they're just celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I think they're a scumbag if they do it, they're free to do that. That's not obscenity. It's not defamation. It's not incitement. It's not a true threat. So those type of things. The protester that basically ran across the Charlie Kirk vigil, I guess that could be considered fighting words potentially. So maybe that's a limit. But as you're seeing, there's very small constitutional grounds for arresting people, and it hasn't really been done too much, or canceling people based off of their speech. The next point I'd like to make is for the different individuals that were fired from their jobs. I'm going to bring up their names right now. So different people that were let go. There's some prominent ones. There are some not so prominent. There's a junior level sustainability strategist at NASDAQ that was let go for the violation of its policy against commentary that condones or celebrates violence. That's understandable. Companies have the right to fire, hire, and decide what they want to do. And in this case, it went against their code of conduct, so they fired this individual. He's not named. Danielle Myers, who was a firefighter and a paramedic in Canyon Lake, Texas, posted on Facebook, "Good riddance. Thoughts and prayers to the other guy," in reference to Kirk's death, and was terminated after an internal review. So that is a little bit more debatable. Can a person be fired based off of their social media post? I would say yes, it's up to the company. You just keep those things to yourself. I'm obviously 110% against it. There was a law professor, Felicia Branch, at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock. who made social media posts mocking mourners and expressing approval of Kirk's death, and she was suspended with pay pending an investigation. There was a police officer in Westchester County who was assigned to a middle school who posted social media commentary that seemed to glorify violence in relation to Kirk's death. The glorification of violence and saying we should do this, I think, is arrestable, which all this is a little bit, but there's a little bit of a difference, and let me explain. Someone saying they're glad somebody is dead is different than glorifying in it and encouraging other maybe people to kill somebody else. And I don't have the exact quote that he was arrested for, but he was reassigned from duties pending an internal investigation. Public school teachers in various states, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, as well as several others, mocked or celebrated posts on social media about his assassination. Completely unacceptable. However, it's up to the school to fire them or not, and it's up to them to decide to be discreet and not post those messages on social media. Some faced suspension, some were fired, and investigation by state, county, and education agencies are pending. Englewood health surgeon Dr. Matthew Jung from New Jersey, my home state unfortunately, allegedly celebrated Kirk's murder while on duty and resigned after major backlash. So we have to be careful as conservatives. We can call these people out for being wrong, and I believe they are. I believe they're despicable. I personally, and no one should ever glorify in death. And if you glorify death, you're like Satan. He's the father of death. He's the father of lies. And if you glorify in it, you're a sick individual and you need help. And I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you are a conservative. I don't care if you're a liberal. I don't care who you are. If you relish and you enjoy death of any individual, I'll say this. The politicians that were shot in Minnesota was wrong. And I didn't take glory in them dying, even though I disagree with their political viewpoints. Years ago when Gabby Giffords was shot and in her home, and she's not been the same since, I didn't glory in Gabby Giffords being shot. I didn't glory in Paul Pelosi's house being raided. I didn't glory in these things. So people should not glory in Charlie Kirk's assassination because they disagree with him politically. Because I'm sure they think Charlie Kirk is scum, and I think some of these left-wing liberal politicians are despicable, but I wouldn't ever glory in their death, and I wouldn't even talk negatively about them shortly after their death because they have families and they're grieving. So it's up to a company, like I said. However, I would say I do think there should be, I think our freedom of speech is being violated a little bit. These people, if we cancel these people and we just expose all these people that are propagating hate, if we do that, what we're really doing is we're starting our own form of hate speech and what we think is hate speech. And I think it is. However, hate speech should not be arrestable. Just like someone shouldn't say the N-word, but they shouldn't go to jail for it. Just like someone shouldn't say slurs against homosexual people and they shouldn't be arrested for it. I believe these people shouldn't be arrested. They shouldn't face consequences of being released from their jobs. Like I said, it's up to the company. That's their right. They're private companies, but a lot of these companies get spooked out and they get scared that there's going to be massive backlash, and that's why there's firing. They don't really care about conservative beliefs or Charlie Kirk. So we got to be careful. We have to make sure that we are very careful in our actions and what we decide to do. Moving on, Jimmy Kimmel was put on leave indefinitely. Here's what he said in quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." Really? I want to say that. Really? You think someone that was in a relationship with a person that was transitioning to a female, so he was in a homosexual relationship with a transgender individual, and who shot the biggest conservative activist in the country, you think he's MAGA? Are you out of your mind? Do you have any reasoning or comprehension skills? Really? That's all I really have to say. I don't know what even to say to that. It's clear when news pundits are saying, we don't really know, we don't have all the information yet. There's a lot of texts that are coming out right now. And for you to say that this guy is with Donald Trump, that just shows how deranged you are to believe that. That's utterly ridiculous. It's literally the craziest thing. I've ever heard in this entire investigation. There are people on the right that kill people on the left, and it's despicable. And I would denounce them, but I wouldn't say, yeah, they're on the left and they're killing another person on the left. That would make no sense, because why would they want to kill somebody with the same ideology as them? Clearly, this person had hate for Charlie Kirk and his Christian worldview, and he took him out. And it's clear by the text that he exchanged with his partner. So the lowlights don't stop there. Montel Williams said on CNN's Newsnight, "I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally." It wasn't motivated politically. He expressed to his parents that this guy was just hateful, and his partner. And you're saying it wasn't political, it was just emotional? We'll read on. I think this was an emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology. He literally became left-leaning this year. So clearly he was insecure about his left-leaning ideas and beliefs. There are people who are trying to pigeonhole this as a leftist thing and a right thing. And what we're really talking about, hear me, because I'm going to throw you when I say this, as if you haven't already. We're talking about a love-torn child. You're telling me. I think you're talking about a child who has serious mental problems, and he's torn from the mental problems he's having upstairs in his brain. This is probably his first real relationship. It just gets wackier and wackier and wackier. You're trying to humanize completely this guy who just committed an atrocious murder. And I'm smiling because this is some of the most stupid logic you'll ever hear. And these guys aren't stupid. They absolutely know what they're saying is bogus. They just don't want to ever admit when the left is wrong. They literally have Trump derangement syndrome. There are people who are trying to pigeonhole this, I mentioned, and a right thing. And what we're really talking about, hear me, is a love-torn child. And somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. I might love somebody, and somebody else might not love the person that I love. But I'm not going to go out there and I'm not going to shoot the person, especially someone I've never met or someone I've met. You got to be kidding me over love. Come on, this is bogus. Let's move on to the next quote. Matt Gutman from ABC News, and he's a chief national correspondent. This is like the wackiest one out there yet. Let's read this. But also, it was very touching in a way that many of us didn't expect. So you have this touching love story from this man who just assassinated Charlie Kirk. How touching, how moving. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself. We're getting an inside look at a serial killer, guys. Or not a serial killer, but an assassin. How awesome is that? With him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love. What a beautiful love story. And I want to protect you, my love. Oh, isn't he such a nice guy? He's trying to protect the person he loves. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And then on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. He just loved everybody except Charlie Kirk. So a very interesting, riveting press conference. I don't think I've ever experienced a press conference in which we've read text messages that are so fulsome. What are you smoking? Fulsome? You're talking about a guy who just assassinated a political figure, and he was doing it because he was insecure about his transgender beliefs? He's so wholesome. Wow, or fulsome. So robust, so apparently allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, get this, so touching. So touching. This guy that literally killed America's biggest conservative activist is touching. He's touching when he pulled his whole entire family into this and they're being searched by the police. He pulled his partner into this and he's getting searched by the police. He pulled an entire university into this, the entire United States of America into this, But this love story, oh man, it's touching. You got to give me a break. So it's just, I'm mind boggled. I don't have much to say. But let's look further. So right now there is a activist. There's an anonymous group called the Charlie Kirk Data Foundation, formerly Charlie's murderers, set up as a crowdsourced database of people alleged to be mocking or celebrating his death. Okay, this would not be arresting people for their free speech. So this is an independent group. So therefore, they can do what they want to do. So what they're doing is they're putting all these people who put like hateful comments about Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump or some other political figure on the right, they're putting them into this database. The site received thousands of submissions of social media posts and identities. I will say that there might be some backlash to this because I don't know if that's exactly legal to be exposing people's identities in a massive platform. So they might face a lawsuit or massive backlash. This site received thousands of submissions of social media posts and identities. The stated goal in many cases is to expose or publicly name and shame people who post such content. Some elected officials and government agencies have urged people to report speech they believe celebrates Kirk's death. I'm against this 100%. This is a violation of freedom of speech. Now, if they're calling for the assassination of another political figure, by all means, report it. That needs to be reported to law enforcement. And by the way, everybody, if you see a threat that someone is going to shoot up a place, they're wanting to commit violence against an individual and planning it, by all means, report it. But if they're just saying they're glad he died, I hate it. And we can respond and try arguing with these people, although I don't know how far that's going to go, because obviously they don't care about civil debate because that's all Charlie did. But they have the freedom to have their freedom of speech, because ours will be violated if we violate theirs right now. For example, Florida's education commissioner pledged investigations for educators who made certain posts. This might be a little bit of an invasion of personal space and personal thought, but it is a state and teachers are employed ultimately by the state. So I guess that's their prerogative. They can do that. The Pentagon has reportedly directed its staff to track military service members who celebrate or condone Kirk's death online. I don't know as much about military law. I know they're held to a higher standard, so that might be permissible in the court of law. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast, this episode. I found it extremely interesting myself and researching what people are saying. So let's stay informed. Let's not trade evil for evil, like I've said, but trade evil for good. Let's make the most out of Charlie Kirk's death. Let's not limit our freedoms, even if maybe it's not applying to us directly. I know we're angry right now, but we can't let the anger get the best of us. We have to channel it in a productive manner, and a productive manner is more dialogue, more debate, not less, not getting angry and wanting to get people arrested who are celebrating a heinous act. The way to get at them the most is by speaking the truth. And when we speak the truth, we make a real difference.